Next, we will have Mathew Jackson. Sorry, I know he was added. Yeah, all set.
Good afternoon, Senator and members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. I want to talk today on how important it is for the ICPC process to continue to get better in its processes and the knowledge of it being an option to just the public in general. My boys were taken, and not only were we not given any paperwork or rights as parents with child services or any court documentation in Tennessee, but we did not even get asked if we had family that could care for the boys, which we have family up here in Connecticut, which is how we got the ICPC done up here after some time. And like I said, we also didn't know anything about the ICPC until we had a family friend that told us about it, and to have our lawyer ask the judge for an expedited ICPC because I was on military transfer orders to Connecticut. Also, even with the process was started in time to check in my command, I had to leave Tennessee on 24 January, and my boys were taken on 12 January of 2023. I had to come up here, report for duty in Connecticut, and then it was another 7 weeks before they were brought to Connecticut, and I didn't see them for that entire 7 weeks. And at first, they also went to Tennessee foster care because we were never asked if we had family that could care for them. So they went to a complete stranger's home at 5 weeks of age, and also in that home, they had COVID going around, so it was putting them at risk of that as well. Let's see, sorry. This should have and could have been avoided, and I feel the time period could have been easily shortened for the two states to talk and to get things aligned. There needs to be a more streamlined and efficient process for the ICPC, especially with infants being involved, not only just for children, but infants. It's a more vital time that they should be with family if they can't be with the parents. This affected me in ways to where it made me depressed, anxious, and lack of focus that I needed to have at work and also in my daily life. Not having my boys was a lot to begin with, but then not even seeing them when I should be able to made that worse. And dealing with the whole situation with losing my boys in the ICPC was worse than when I was on board the USS Connecticut that hit an underwater mountain and almost took all of our lives. Losing my boys was more of a traumatic experience. This is why I feel that the state of Connecticut or any other state that's monitoring for ICPC should be able to do their own investigation to see if the other state did the right thing, or even as a second opinion to back that up. Because then we are even wasting time and resources providing monitoring and work. They may not be needed when it could have been streamlined or taken care of faster. So I feel that we're wasting time of resources and personnel to focus on something that can be taken care of in a faster manner, if it was stated. This is just unjust due to the fact that...
Can you please summarize your testimony?
Yes. This is unjust due to the hands of Connecticut being tied and not being able to help when my family needed help, even when I'm a state resident now. I've been living here for years now. I have a house, and my wife is also from Connecticut, raised in Griswold and only transferred due to me being in the military. Other than that, I just ask that not only to better this process for military families, but all families, because anybody can come with this tragic event at any point. And I thank you for your time and listening to what I have to say.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Representative Lanou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jackson, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate your advocacy on this issue and your story. And let me thank you for your service to this country as a Navy man, as somebody who who enlisted. I know I have to obey by the two-question rule, so I just want to make sure, I just want to sign it. I'm going to just summarize here in my own mind for context before I ask you the question. So essentially, you were assigned to Washington State, up in the Tacoma, Washington area for the Navy. Your wife, of course, went with you. Griswold native, Connecticut native, born and raised in Griswold for the most part, spent most of her life here. When you got reassigned to Groton, Connecticut, in the end of 2022, you went from Tacoma, Washington to Groton. In transit, you stopped in Tennessee, which you never resided in. Your parents had retired there, and you, like millions of other people, for Christmas stopped there to enjoy the Christmas holiday with them. When you were there, you were concerned about one of your sons possibly having an injury. You took him to the local hospital, and they were concerned with the injuries. To make a long story short, to summarize, the Tennessee Family Services decided they were going to take custody of your children, and eventually they got placed with your in-laws, your Mrs. Jackson's parents, in Griswold. By a state that you never resided in. Did I summarize all this correctly?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you were in Washington State, did you have a pediatrician look at your children, evaluate your children after they were born, your twin boys?
Yes, after the boys were born, it was the next day that they had their newborn appointment, and then they had a follow-up appointment the week after that. And then at the 2-week mark, they had a circumcision that was outside the hospital, because they don't do them in the hospital there, that was in the pediatrician's office. So they were seen a total of 3 times and told to have good health by examinations before we left Washington the day after their circumcision.
Okay, did the military, you remember you're an active duty military personnel, did the military do an investigation into you and your wife as far as being considered good parents, if you should have custody of your children? Did they do any kind of underlying investigation into any of this?
Yes. When I got up here, I checked into my command and immediately went to the Fleet and Family Support Center, where they had a family advocacy program, and they opened investigation with NCIS and the child abuse team up in Bethesda to be able to look at it, and where we provided all the information, including the scans from Tennessee. And it was two or 3 days ago now where they came to that conclusion that we were unsubstantiated and it did not meet criteria for abuse or neglect.
So essentially they're saying the children belong with you. That's what the U.S. military say.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lanou. Other questions? Representative Wieslander. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. I apologize.
So thank you so much for your testimony, and of course, thank you for your service. I'm just trying to get a little clarity exactly what happened here. So you were serving in the military. You're moving back to Connecticut. On your way, you visit your in-laws, and what exactly transpired that would result in taking away your children? Is it children or child?
Children, ma'am.
Children.
So yes, ma'am, I can answer that. So upon transfer, when I was in Tennessee at my parents' house, I was changing one of my sons and putting his left arm into the onesie. I heard a pop in his arm. So from there, we took him to the hospital because we figured something was wrong and he needed help. We took him to the hospital, and they did complete body scans of my son, and then they said that it was just a humerus fracture and that there was nothing else, that everything else looked good. And then they also asked me if they could look at my other son, his twin, and I said yes, you can look at him. So I checked him in. They did body scans of him, didn't find anything. They kept us overnight in separate rooms and had to be monitored. And then the next day they discharged us, saying that everything was good, but they did have child services investigate because it was just a suspicious injury, which I understand because child safety. But then from there, it was a couple hours later into the middle of the night after we discharged where they called and they said that we had to bring our other twin that didn't have any injuries back to the hospital because now they think that he has injuries. So at that point, my wife and my mother took him to the hospital for him to get rechecked, where then they determined that they think that he had healing rib fractures and at 5 weeks old, and they said that it was not possible that they were from birth. And then at that point, the CPS took him from the hospital from my wife, and then the other son that was at the house with my father and I, another team came and got him, and then we didn't get to, I didn't get to say goodbye to my other son, and then she didn't get to say goodbye to the one at home.
Okay, that's quite the story, and sounds absolutely unimaginable, quite frankly, that we get from a point where you bring your child in for an examination to the point where your two children now are, and you are a suspect, I'm assuming, of abuse, right?
Yes,
Neglect and abuse, was that the charge?
Yes, ma'am, even though we have 4 medical experts that say otherwise.
And for the 4 medical, I know I'm going over my 2 questions. Sorry.
When was the statement? I'll let you go.
Okay. I recognize that the 4, or my question would be, were the 4 medical experts now here in the state of Connecticut made that observation, or was that back in Tennessee?
No, ma'am. They're actually from different states. There's some out of Illinois. I believe one here, and then other states, because we got through them through the Child Resource Center out of Illinois that fight for families that were wrongfully accused.
I understand now. Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe there may be some other questions to further try to clarify what's going on here. Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wielander?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to Representative Lanou for providing that synopsis. I know this is it's a challenging situation. Trying to use my questions wisely. Would you be able, I'm trying to understand the situation and what you and the proponents are hoping to get from it. Would it be correct to say that you're hoping that we can look at this compact to ensure that if you are a resident of a different state, that you have an agency or advocates on your side that can be more representative for you in a situation like this, so you or any other family wouldn't be, I don't want to say use the word at the whim of another state's agency, but be not without resources of your own? Am I right in that assumption?
Yes, ma'am, because especially because, like, being in Connecticut, they're monitoring and giving all the information back, but I feel that just for any ICPC, that the state that is monitoring should be able to do their own investigation and look into things and also give feedback on that, on what they find.
And has Connecticut looked into that? And was that done in a timely manner if they did?
So they did not, because they said they were not able to because it is not their jurisdiction. However, I did have a baby girl in December.
Congratulations.
That because of predicted neglect, they tried to take her, but were not successful. We got her back because it was found that it was unsubstantiated and there were not any harm to children. But during that process, they did pull all the stuff from Tennessee and were trying to use that to take her.
Can I ask one more question? Did you get your boys back?
No, ma'am. It's been 14 months now, and they still live with my in-laws in Griswold.
I'm just trying to process all of this. And having 3 brothers that were in the service, 2 of them under the auspices of the Navy, I also know that they look into these types of situations very, very carefully, and don't mess around with if they've cleared you. I'm just trying to understand the next steps in the process and why you're here where you are in this situation and your family. Thank you very much for your testimony and for being able to ask questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Representative Dauphiné.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matt, for being here. We're so appreciative that you can tell your story. And to Rep. Wielander's point, and I think many people in this room, we're all appalled, simply appalled at what's happened to you and that you still don't have your boys. I'm very proud and pleased to have kind of worked with you along through this, and we're happy to get your story out. But I guess maybe you could, I don't know what was said. I was in another meeting, and so I just came down. But could you just maybe fill us in? I know Alicia, your wife, will be on in a little bit, and we'll be able to get a little more information from her. But did DCF here in Connecticut have an opportunity to look at anything with regard to your case in Tennessee, or has this been like Tennessee's case and they handle it and that's what you're dealing with?
Yes, ma'am. So Tennessee is, since it's their jurisdiction, they handle it. So DCF here, they have not looked into anything for the boys, even though we have given them all the information, because it's not their jurisdiction. They're solely just to monitor and give reports back on how we work with the children, which have all been glowing reports. But again, that's why I think that Connecticut should be able to do their own investigation in the ICPC process and feed that back to where they could have a meeting and maybe determine something between the two.
Thank you for that answer. And I would add that, we're looking at now, how many months has it been since your boys were taken from you? Because how old are they now?
They are almost 14 months. So
they were taken at 5 weeks? 14
months is, sorry. It's been 14 months since they've been taken,
okay.
But they're about 15 months old.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can look at this and say, if this case were in Connecticut, perhaps things could have moved along much quicker for you to have your day in court, be able to bring the doctors in, which I understand you did have your boys evaluated by a pediatrician, a specialist in Boston, which was, if you will, disregarded by the Tennessee DCF, and perhaps that would have been looked at a little bit differently here. There's so many pieces to this testimony and story that it will take us hours to really cover all of it. But would you agree that all of those things would be better handled if they were here in your home state versus having to try to work with those in the state of Tennessee and living here?
I do, ma'am. I believe that the state of Connecticut is not only more efficient in handling those processes more faster, but it was even proven when with my daughter, how when they tried taking her, we were in court the next week to take care of that, where we still haven't set foot in court down in Tennessee and still won't till April, and we've spent about $35,000 so far.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you mostly for your service to our country. We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to listening to Alicia as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to yield my 2 questions back to Representative Lanou.
Representative Lanou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jackson, can you tell me, as far as the scope of what happened in Tennessee, with the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. Did they, what was the scope of their investigation? Did they contact the state of Washington? Did they, did they consider what the military, how the military essentially exonerated you and your wife? Did they take that into the account at all as far as the placement of your children?
No, they did not. So, can you repeat the question again in the further beginning?
Yeah, I'll rephrase. The military, as we discussed, you said they essentially exonerated you and your wife of any wrongdoing. They independently looked at this. Has the state of Tennessee took this into consideration at all?
No, they have not. And the initial contact with Child Services, like I believe you also asked in your question down there, we even informed them of how my wife's side of the family has rickets in the family. So we wanted them to look into that, and they just brushed it off. They didn't do that. And also with how they were born early and she had prenatal issues as well, like preterm labor and stuff with the boys. And we explained all this to them and what we would like for them to look at more, like even possible OI or brittle bone disease. And they, again, just brushed that off. And even when the doctor at the hospital said that she could not rule that out, they still decided to take the children.
Wow. Let me bring it back home. Let's talk about Connecticut DCF. What they're able to do. Have they been able, or do you know, have they independently investigated the underlying allegations, the underlying decisions that were rendered against you by the state of Tennessee? Have they looked or investigated the underlying matter in this case, and do you know why or why not?
To my knowledge, they have not, and I do not know why, because we've given them all the same information over and over.
Okay, so everything's pretty much at a standstill where you still do not have your children?
Yes, because they said Connecticut says they are unable to help because it is not in their hands or in their jurisdiction.
It is not
Representative Lanu.
Okay, yep.
Representative Pizzuto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to yield my two questions to Rep. Dauphiné. Thank you.
I thought perhaps you might.
Yeah.
Representative Lanu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be quick. I wanted you to explain a little bit the difficulty in trying to get assistance in Tennessee while living here. For example, I know you've been working with Rep. Lanu. I know you've been working with Representative Dubitsky. We have spent hours on the phone working with you. How does that translate to trying to get a legislator in Tennessee or perhaps somebody there to help you when you're living here?
So it's been difficult because they just do things differently down there, especially where it is. It's a smaller town. But I will say we have reached out to a representative down there that said give us the questions and stuff, and they will go to the commissioner down there. And we've given that, and I'm still unsure if they actually went to the commissioner to talk to them about it.
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to have everyone here understand how difficult it is when you don't have your own representative in your own area helping you, and because you live here, you don't have that in Tennessee, so it makes it that much harder. But thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Representative Dauphiné. Any other questions? Matt, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. We very much appreciate you.
Thank you again, Senator.